Hello to the benchmarking workgroup meeting, August 28th, 2017. So far we have in attendance myself, Michael Dawson, Kunal Pathak, as well as Udam Pawar and Gareth Ellis. And I don't know if Udam or Kunal, you have anybody else with you today?
No.
Okay. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Okay, so in terms of our agenda, we'll start with our stand-up, talk about actions from last meeting, do an open issue review, and then go on to other business. Anybody have anything else to add to the agenda? Nope, okay. In terms of the stand-up, since last meeting we held a session that I was involved in along with Kunal in terms of trying to get make some progress on setting up DCEIS. I followed up with Miles on the startup fix. As we know, we made a security fix that affected startup significantly. It seems to have come back in master, but not in Node version 8. It did turn out that there was a fix missing, and we're still waiting for that to hit a release to see that recover in the benchmarking charts. And some investigation, just this morning I was taking a look to see if I could figure out why DCEIS isn't starting up, and I'll try and find some more time to do some of that as well. Kunal, I think you're next in the list.
Yeah, so as you pointed out, I was attending this DCEIS dry run thing. I was reviewing the PR that Uttam updated today morning. But yeah, like if you don't have time, I can take a look into that MongoDB thing. And I noticed that Uttam did some updates to how MongoDB is starting, and like, there was something about killing the MongoDB process that you uncommented. But yeah, mostly about DCEIS, and didn't much have time to do anything else.
Okay. Gareth.
Yeah, not too much. It would still be good if we could get a bit more feedback on the running the micro benchmarks. I did spend a bit of time looking into an issue that the benchmark run that Mattia had kicked off. It seemed to be not exactly an issue with the wrapper, but the wrapper looks out that it can get a decent set of numbers, and it didn't find that, so it quit out, but there wasn't a particularly helpful error message to tell you that. So it took a bit of discovering to work that one out. But I might have a look at maybe adding something else to the wrapper so at least people know. I did listen to the recording from the last meeting, and I think there was a suggestion maybe to have some drop-down boxes rather than having to know the sort of different areas that you can run the benchmarks on. So I'll have a look at expanding the Jenkins job to.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I think that would be handy, as well as if you don't already have it, like a guide that says, "Here's how you use it," right?
Okay. Yep. I'll see what I can get together.
I think that guide we would then want to send out to collaborators to say, "Here's how you use the job," and maybe like even we can come up with a bit of guidance around when you might want to use it, right?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Udam.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I looked at of course, I spent looking at the Node DC problem, why we weren't able to run that, first of all, MongoDB. The one issue was I wasn't able to start the MongoDB on different port, non-standard port, which was 27018. When I commented that I think I can now run MongoDB process, Node DC run completes, but the script doesn't exit. And I did find the problem today. I fixed it. I ran it on my local machine. It seems to be working okay, giving out all the stats and exiting cleanly. I'm going to update that script. And if nothing else is running, maybe I'll try give it a one shot on Node benchmarking machine and see whether that works there.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You don't have to spend time debugging that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great, because I tried it this morning and it still seemed to got stuck trying to start the MongoDB. Like it complained it couldn't find MongoDB, but if you figured out those kinds of things, yeah, it'd be great if you gave it a shot. And if it doesn't finish, maybe just give me a ping so that I can go clean up the machine. But other than that,
Yeah,
that'd be good.
yeah. It seems to be working. I tried multiple times on local. It seems to be working okay.
Okay.
So
Okay, sounds good. I'm just going to add that notes here. Working on. Let's see. Okay, actions from last meeting. So Michael, to suggest updated wording for participation guidelines. I still haven't done that, so I'm just going to roll that over. Kuno will open an issue we'll open an issue in the repo to track adding mean or something like that, to Acme error runs, and then we're going to close that. And I think maybe you already did. Is that 132?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that's done. Okay. So then let's move on to the open issues review. So the first one is 127, status of running node. These are the ones that are tagged for discussion. So status of running node core benchmarks. Let's see, that's 127. I think that's one, yeah, we've already talked about the Garrus you're working on, right?
Yep, but again, if people want to have a go at using it, even if it's just sort of testing little bits and pieces, any feedback that makes it easier to use would be appreciated.
So I guess you've got a little bit about the drop downs and stuff and making guide. If we did that, do you think we're then ready to land?
Well, yeah, I mean, so to be able to run it, we landed the script.
Sorry, okay, are we done?
Yeah, I think, yeah, if we were to push it out to a smaller group of people to start with, iron out any extra issues,
Right.
And then push it out to everyone.
Okay. Maybe we could ask like the CTC members to take a first look kind of thing.
Yep. But I say I'll try and get a guide together as well as the drop down, and then.
Sounds good. Okay, so I think that one was on the agenda. I don't know, do we want to leave that one on? Do we need to discuss that in the next meeting is the question. So whether we leave that tag on it or not.
It depends if anybody on the call fancies going and having a go and saying, oh yeah, well, I've had an issue with this bit, or this didn't work very well, or I don't know.
Maybe we should all take an action.
Target audiences.
Maybe we should try and do that and then discuss it next week. That would be a good idea. So let's leave it on. If everybody could sort of, if you can find some time to try it out, that would be good. The next one.
One question. So how do you run this core benchmarks? They are supposed to run like our Acme and node.js, or is there a different process or different script to run? I can give it a shot if I get some information.
So I presume you're in the group where, in fact, I think anybody in the benchmarking group can go and launch jobs in Jenkins. There's a job in there called benchmark node micro benchmarks.
Okay.
So if you go in there, press build with parameters, there's a little bit of text below each one, but I say I'll aim either later today or tomorrow, I'll try and put a very brief guide together at least in that status of the running benchmarks, and then have a go, try the instructions. If it doesn't work, let me know what didn't work, and obviously that'll be a good area to start.
Is this something I can try on my local machine?
Well, it's a job in the CI that will let you run the node, the core. Like node core has a whole whack of little micro benchmarks.
Right.
They take a long time to run. This is a job in the CI that will let you run them there.
And essentially, the main bit of work that we're trying to do is to make the set of benchmarks easy to use when, for example, we're reviewing a pull request or investigating further if there's some question about performance between two different releases, something like that. So the main bit of work is Jenkins and a wrapper script that we've got checked into the benchmarking repo.
And some of the reasons people requested is that, if you're going to run something for 8, 10, 24 hours, it's kind of hard to do that on your own local machine sometimes.
Right. Okay. Do we do any flag mining, or there's just one set of flags with different set of inputs? We do the various node build with the various flags, or this is just the input will be different size of input. Maybe array size is different, string to process would be different, things like that.
At this point, it's just running the existing micro benchmarks and whatever different options that they choose.
Okay. Okay. I'll give it a try.
Yeah. Okay, that was number 127. The new script for the other one was 123, which is a new script to run node.js workload. I think we're also discussing that. So I think we're making progress on that one. I don't know that we need to keep that one tagged as.
I just have one addition to that. So node.js can run in two modes. One, it can run in what it has been configured currently, which is a single instance run. It can also run in multiple in a cluster mode. So it can run, it can spawn as many processes as you want. So how do I, let's say if you want to try that out on benchmarking, just to highlight the benefit, should I write a new script? Is this something I can modify the existing script and try to set that up? How do you, and then as you know, we are also working to add this server-side rendering use case.
Right.
So every time that we want to run that also, which is again part of the whole under the umbrella of Node DCIS or DCIS.
Right. So I guess it depends on what makes sense. Like,
okay,
less duplication, the better, right? So if it's something where you could have a single script and you pass it an option that tells it which way you want to run, and that cuts down the duplication of what's in the script, that would be good. If it means that now the script is 10 times more complicated, then maybe two different scripts makes sense, right?
Okay. Okay, because the cluster one, I think we can use the existing code base for the SSR is coming probably in a week or so.
Right.
But okay, I'll try to modify the script first, get this working, and then modify script to do the cluster runs.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And then, if we want to set up CI runs of multiple of them, we can do that fairly easily.
Okay.
Okay,
so in that case, then you don't want to continue to add here, I guess.
I removed like just the agenda tag, because I think the idea is we put it on the agenda if there's something we need to talk about in this meeting, as opposed to like if we're working it and making progress, then it doesn't need to be tagged.
Okay.
Okay, issues review. The next thing is in Node.js build, so install a var script on new benchmarking machines. That one I think was tagged because we needed somebody to do something. It was done. I still want to go back and see if we had any options in doing it slightly differently, or at very least we have to close on the configuration in the build work group to make sure that we have Ansible covering getting it installed if it's going to be installed on the machine. So that one I think though doesn't need to be tagged in our agenda necessarily either. I think Gareth, you opened that, right? So I think in terms of the intent of tagging it, you're probably just, I guess I'm asking if you agree whether removing the tag makes sense or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any more discussion needed on it. So.
Okay, doing that.
Well, one question again I hear, I know it's not about the build itself, but Intel had sent 2 machines. Are we going to use those machines for benchmarking performance testing work? How do I get the status of those machines? What's happening? And
so they're both connected into the CI.
okay.
They're being used for general jobs right now. They're also, the job that Gareth is working on is targeting them. And we can also, use them for whatever other things. So if like, the network version of what you're doing makes sense to run there.
Okay.
The only, like, so in terms of what Gareth is running is set up, it's potentially that collaborators will kick off a run that goes for say 24 hours or something, right? And that could interfere with regular runs. So we may just want to figure out how we, manage that across those 2 machines. But otherwise, we want to, put them to the best use we possibly can.
I just want to know if they're already in use or they're still getting configured. So if they're already in use, that's what minimum I want to know now. Okay.
Yep, they are.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So that was what was on our agenda. Now, I think we also wanted to talk about collaboration with the V8 team, and I think Benjamin is joined already.
Yeah, but it's Benedict.
Yeah, sorry, Benedict is joined. So what maybe I'd suggest we flip to that topic next.
Yeah, fine.
I guess it's that we want to figure out how to collaborate going forward in terms of benchmarks that the V8 team's working on, as well as the kind of things we're looking at, right? Or
yep. But also talking about potential new benchmarks.
Right. So do you have some in mind, or what's like on your side? Do you have a roadmap or something that we should start to talk about? What's kind of the way to kick off that discussion?
So we do indeed have something in mind. So first of all, there's the Octane benchmark.
Yeah.
Which is officially deprecated, but that doesn't mean that we don't track it anymore.
Right.
We finally caught up after the switch to Torofan with the previous performance. And we might even get to JavaScript core level soon. But we will probably stop there looking into Octane specifically. I saw you set it up now, or for some time now. So at least we catch regressions in Node if there is something different than in Chrome, which happened in the past.
Yep.
But this is only for regression testing mostly. So for driving performance work in the future, one thing we would like to set up is what we would call a web tooling benchmark, which is this benchmark suite that contains everything people, or most common tools that people use nowadays to build web pages, like TypeScript, like Babel, like whatever, everything that runs on Node there. So like 10 or 15 of the most popular tools.
Right.
Set up in a way that it not only runs in Node, but ideally also in the browser, so that we can easily compare based on this benchmark also to other browsers. Because for Node, we could only compare to Chakra Core. And we would like to get a sense of where we stand over time.
Okay, well, that definitely sounds good. Like if you look at this page, like sort of our, the overall goal of this group is to try, we tried to identify use cases and key attributes that we'd like to measure.
Yep.
And so any new benchmarks that help fill in the gaps, because there's still a lot of gaps in terms of even the use cases we identified on, and if there's other use cases you think are important, we should, factor that feedback in as well. But I think some of the, things that you talked about, like using it as a, like in the tool chain, is an important thing, which we definitely don't cover right now, right?
Well, there's this small script section and the start-stop time, but yeah, besides that,
yeah,
it's not really covered.
Right, not covered well. How about that?
Oh, well, yes.
So yeah, I think if you and really our bottleneck has mostly been just cycles to come up with new benchmarks and add them in.
So I talked to the Webpack developers and Babel core developers already, and they are willing to provide benchmarks or have already provided one. So we already have one from Webpack, although I'm not really happy with that. We obviously also have the TypeScript one, and there's a Babel frontend. This is part of the Area 6 benchmark, Babylon benchmark. If you're fine with that, then we'll probably start trying to pull something together next month, or in general Q3, end of Q3, start of Q4 work item for us.
Certainly sounds reasonable to me. Anybody else comments or?
So just wanted to check, what are your thoughts on measuring the memory performance or the garbage collector performance? Because most of the benchmarks do cover like the CPU time, and I know like in Octane we had like a couple of test cases that stress the garbage collection time, but I think it will be good to have those kind of benchmarks or those kind of metrics that we measure for those benchmarks. So if you see the the link that you have shared, Michael, in the metrics
Mhm.
coverage, like, there is nothing for GC specific thing that we have today in place.
We do measure this already in Chrome. So the problem is you cannot really measure it from the script, from within the script.
Right. I mean, like Node is a different scenario now. Like in the Chrome, you have like one like website open, you just have it for a few minutes and then you might close it. But Node is like it's running a server which can run for months. Uh, so maybe like it will be worth to at least like measure the memory trend that we see, and that's the part of like issue I have opened. If you go to Node.js benchmarking number 132. I was trying to come up with a better way to measure the memory footprint over the period of time when the node process or the node benchmark is running.
Yeah, I do think we can do something about it because we already have a lot of infrastructure that is currently implemented in V8 and used by Chrome.
Right.
You probably need to plug it into Node somehow.
Okay. Yeah. Wanted to hear your thoughts about this.
So you're talking about better measurement of ACNIA memory footprint, yeah. I know that someone from the CDC, I think, probably Ali was already talking to our memory team at some point.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in this, then we can probably try to get something running and have someone look into this on our side.
Sure.
So this is clearly not my area of expertise, but I think it makes sense, yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah, because like, for example, I was just comparing the memory, like I work for Chakra. I used to work for Chakra, and we used to just compare the memory, and like Node we had like it just like stays at like for a given benchmark, it stays at 600 meg, but Chakra goes to like 1 gig and then come downs. And like after the benchmark is done running, the memory footprint after benchmark is done is same for Chakra and V8. But how would we know like in that when the benchmark was actually running, it was like Chakra was consuming twice memory than V8. So we should have some way to measure that.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I can try to ping some people on the GC team.
Okay.
As said, we have all this infrastructure inside of Chrome now. Mm-hmm. So it's also in V8, obviously, but it's not hooked up in Node in any ways. Maybe we could have a common API that Node Chakra core can also implement then.
Right. Yep. So is that something that we want to talk about in the Node Conf EU? Or?
Well, I think the idea was we can get together in these meetings to talk about those things as opposed to waiting to Node Conf EU, and also not everybody's going to be there.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think, if I don't know, Benedict, if you're planning to come every other week now, which is when we meet.
Oh, sure. I think I'm almost collaborator now. I think I need to do this training first, but besides that, yeah, I'm very interested to join.
You're welcome either way anyway. You don't need to be a Node.js collaborator to join in the work group here. So feel free to yeah. So okay, that's good to hear. So yeah, I think we can just, you can give us an update as where you're at. Ideally, in the end, we'll end up with a PR that lands a script that we can then set up to run like nightly, like we have the rest of them, and publish results and go from that.
Yeah, I think that could work for memory. The question is also, what is a good benchmark for that?
Right. Well, I meant even the other benchmarks you were working on as well, and memory is like another one. We want to build out a larger set of benchmarks to cover all those different things over time.
Okay, fair enough. So, not speaking about tooling, not speaking about ACNIA, what other big benchmarks do you have in mind for Node?
So I think Udem's been working on Node DCEIS.
I saw that flyby, yeah, or saw that somewhere.
That's really the only one that we have on the radar. The other ones, we've got the use cases and attributes we want to cover, but we haven't made a lot of progress on finding or picking benchmarks.
Okay.
So basically, if you have some to propose or aware of that, that's we're very much looking for that.
Yeah, I think our hope was also, besides the web tooling, which is kind of obvious for us, that you would come up with, or that you already had something in mind where you say, okay, look, this application is terrible, and here's something that V8 should improve.
Yeah, there's been a few suggestions on other benchmarks that we should run. I think I'd have to go back into the issues of what they were. I think like Ghost was mentioned as one of the ones as a sample one, and there's 2 or 3 others, but the reality is we just haven't had enough cycles applied to, find or build those benchmarks.
Okay, so the one of the main motivations to improve our collaboration is also, we don't want to end up in the situation again that we had with TurboFan, where it was just impossible, or at some point it was impossible to decide whether it's okay or not.
Right.
I'm not saying we would in a compiler or anything, but just making decisions, like switching to the new GC is happening probably for the next node release, and
Right.
it would be nice to understand whether it's fine or whether there's some issues that we should look into early.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength. Getting really as many different benchmarks that cover as many of the different use cases to help inform that decision. It's just a matter of the work to get and figure out what those should be and get them running.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess it's like we've been making, I don't know, I would say slow progress over since we started this work group. And if you guys have a little more horsepower, we can make slightly faster progress. And that's what I think we should just continue to do, push in new benchmarks as we have time and can get them up and running.
Okay, but there's a downside to that. So we have really a lot of benchmarks running on our infrastructure now.
Yep.
But most of them just generate noise nowadays. So it's really hard to tell over time what is important and what not. So just adding more is probably also, you have more coverage then, but then it's also harder to decide because every change will cause some
something
number to go up, number to go down. And then it's a matter of priorities. So what is really important for Node? What do you think is the most important use case besides the obvious tooling case?
Right, so you're saying we should choose among these, we have 7 use cases, right?
Yes, on this wiki.
Right, so you're suggesting we should choose which ones we think are most important and prioritize those?
It would be nice if we would know. So for us, it's difficult. It depends on who you talk to, and you get a completely different answer. It's like, oh yeah, the interaction with the network is the worst thing because we have to switch between C++ and JavaScript 2 times. Can you do something about that? So yeah, okay, we could look into that. And the next thing is, but this is not so important. What's more important is the JSON processing. This is too slow. Or I don't know. You talk to 10 people, you get 10 different P0 items.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's because Node has a pretty broad set of use cases, right?
Yes.
Yeah, can I interject here a little bit? So yeah, as Mike said correctly, it's just so many ways Node.js can be used. It's really like a shell script, So with Node DCEIS, one thing we try to do, we standard way Node runs a single instance application, then you have a cluster so that application can take advantage of multiple core machines. Then it also runs in the microservices mode. So same application is divided among functionality, so you can run in different machines and whatnot. And as part of that, we measure it measures memory usages over every 10. So it collects the performance for every 10 seconds for 100 seconds. So maybe there are 10 samples, you can run it for 200 seconds, but it collects the data for every 10-second period. Within that, it collects the memory data, how much memory was used during that last 10 seconds, and also it tries to measure the network bandwidth. What was the network bandwidth in that 10 second, and try to generate a graph. So, but again, it is still not complete picture, right? It's still one few sets of data point, but can address these few things we talked about. You just talked about the networking. We are working on the server side rendering, which is mainly a string processing, render to string type of functionality. And we, as we see fit, I guess every time do we need to write a total new application just to address that one use case, or how should we, maybe that's something we can talk about. Should we extend existing one, or should we keep on writing a new one just to address a new simple independent use case?
So, okay, so how do you run this? You probably
Yeah, so let me get this working hopefully today, and so that we
okay.
can see couple runs overnight, and then I'll try to set up in microservices mode, the cluster mode, and it also generates its own data points, own graphs, and we can look at those data points and see whether that is something useful, and maybe we can take that as some way we can implement as a infrastructure for the everything we run on these machines. We can calculate the network speed, we can calculate the bandwidth, the memory usages, anything we run on this machine, we can collect those data points, GC stats, and then we can maybe learn something from that over time. So there can be some common properties we really want to track from the node core, and then comes the application. How we can implement for which we can collect across any application. It doesn't have to The application doesn't have to do that with what node.dc does today. It doesn't have to do, but there's something infrastructure which does that. Anything you run on that machine, we can think like that maybe.
So for that common infrastructure, it would be nice to also expose some of the GC data, GC states. I don't know if you already get that.
GC stats, I believe we have a flag, but I don't think we are using it. But that is something, again, as I said, we want to do it. The networking something we do, the memory, RSS memory heap that we collect, but I don't believe that GC stat was enabled. But that probably is easy to do. Um,
So
but
that
again,
would
my
be,
point was, as we add more workloads, does it make sense to have something common infrastructure as part of the Jenkins data collection, which collects these things, and then the application runs in whatever mode it wants to run.
I guess it makes sense, but this is probably mostly for server-like workloads. Because you don't have network if you just run TypeScript, for example. Yeah, but for server-like workloads, it probably makes a lot of sense to have this common infrastructure.
Yeah, I think especially from the point of view that if obviously the more benchmarks and tests that we start running, if we then start sort of filling out onto multiple machines, we would have to be very careful that we don't then go and try and make comparisons between a run that's run this week on machine 1 versus a run that's run 2 weeks ago on machine 2. Don't know if that was one of the things you were meaning by having sort of a common set of things that we're trying to collect.
Yeah.
Was that question for me or?
I think it was for Unum.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm saying a lot of times writing these small apps is very easy. It's not a very terrible, difficult job. But coming with everyone trying to implement their own way of collecting all these different data points, and then That's what probably takes most time. That's what we realized when we were writing this node.js EIS. The application has not changed since we wrote first time, maybe a couple times, but the most of the change of the time spent was on developing this client, the driver program, which collects different statistics, generates graphs, aggregate the data, and that takes most time. So that's where I was thinking, would it be a good idea to have some, maybe spend a little thinking at least? Can there be common infrastructure we enable whenever we run node? That's it.
Right. So it's, I mean, I
Irrespective
think,
of-
like, if I understand, my take on what you're saying is, should we just try and reuse DCEIS? Like, if we come to try and fill in a new use case, you know, if it's applicable, reuse the infrastructure to run whatever the different workload's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, and node.js doesn't have to be. It can be anything else. If we come up with a very simple, that's fine. I'm just thinking how we can minimize the time spent on developing this infrastructure and just writing different use cases. You know, server-side rendering, JSON processing, microservices, and all those things. But we don't have to then every single time we don't have to worry about are we getting the right kind of data back.
So, if I understand correctly, then what you are currently developing is kind of a node version of telemetry framework that we use for Chrome.
Yeah, it's a very simple Python client driver we wrote, which like a run spec. Now it is kind of based on a spec CPU, how the spec CPU has a run spec purple script, but it's just a Python script which it populates the database, generate the URLs, randomize the URLs good enough so that it can get request and the post request and the delete request are distributed equally in every 10-second runs, because there's so many ways you can skew the results if you don't really run a consistent ways. If I only
Yes.
do the get request, for example, application, we get a different data than request. So, but when we collecting 10 seconds data, we want to make sure that 10 seconds is a good enough sample, so it can give a good result at the end of the run. So those things are probably common across Acme, no DC, and maybe something new tomorrow. And also, what is the end result? What is the memory footprint? What is the GC looks like? What is network usage during that run? And then comes the request per second metric. So can that be kind of, we can use common structure for that? So that's one thinking I just want to put out there, and we can think about it and come back and discuss again.
I think anything we can do to standardize and reuse, in my mind, is good.
Yeah, so we have been quite successful using these users, what we call user stories, which is just some web page that you need to load and then some user actions that are recorded and replayed. Something similar like that, and something as easy to use in the end would be great for Node as well. And obviously telemetry also provides you with all the, so you can provide, you can insert hooks and say, okay, I want to get this data out and that data out and that data out. And then in the end, it just displays all the data. And also gives it to different versions if you want. So having this common infrastructure would be great, yeah.
Right, so maybe what we need to think about is what would that look like? I mean, I guess, Udom, in terms of, you've been working on the DCEIS, is it there pieces from that we can pull out, or is it, what are you thinking about how we would get there?
So there are some pieces for sure. Of course, it's not the whole picture, but there are definitely some pieces we can reuse. But along with our in that issue, we have a list of use cases. We should also list out what kind of data we really want to collect over time, which can give a good view into what the node is performing, how the node is performing across various cases. And there is a common data we can look at, and that's what we should put it on a list to work on or think about at least.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, I mean, if you could, submit a PR that is like the starting point of what you think we should document in terms of that list, we could then have everybody else chime in and hopefully end up with a document that says these are the kind of data things that we're looking to capture.
Okay.
I'd maybe suggest like a separate document, like in that, say the benchmarking doc, like a separate MD document to start with, to say these are the things we think are important, and then we can figure out how to mix that data into the rest of the, like the use case coverage and that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, my thinking overall is, let's say someone new customer comes along, they download the node benchmarking just to verify how the machine or hardware they have is behaving. They can run this and it generates all these data points, and then they can understand where are the, just at the infrastructure level, what are the bottlenecks. Is my network is not good enough? Do I need a higher bandwidth network card? Do I have what kind of memory usage I'm getting, and things like that. And without doing any code change, without writing a and then that probably gives more value for people who are using these benchmarks.
Right, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so far we've been using it more of as a regression. Well, we've only gotten as far as using it as a regression tool to say, let's at least try and track things and make sure we don't regress. But that means we wouldn't like be trying different network cards and stuff. But what you suggest is also an interesting thing for people to say, how good is what I've set up and where are the shortcomings.
But for that, you need some kind of reference score.
Yes.
But these sort of things, as long as we are making it easy for the end users, we can have more adoption of these things. And what we want is we want people to use Node and whatever Node comes with, testing wise, performance wise, and benchmark wise. You don't want customers to go and maybe write a benchmark and try to understand it. It's just too much time spent on that. If we can create something which is already there, people just run it out of box like Node and get some initial data about the performance. They get an idea. Oh, am I hitting some limit in my infrastructure? So there are two angles. One is developer angle and another is user angle.
Right.
Customer
yeah,
angle.
I mean, from my perspective, I agree that's useful. And just my priority would be covering off the existing use cases that we have just to make sure we don't break anything before we cover the other one. But not to say, it'd be good to make progress on both. Just if I have time, I'd probably work on the first one until we get that covered off a bit better.
We should also sort of remember that, as we were talking at the beginning about the very wide range of ways that people are using Node, we shouldn't ever think that we'll be able to measure absolutely every single way that somebody is using Node and expect to be able to find absolutely any regression that's going to hit any end user. Obviously, it can be a goal, but I think with the sort of downloads that we're seeing of node.js, I think we'd be very lucky to notice every single possible regression that could exist.
Right. I think it's just, where we're at, we can probably get more data and usefully consume it. But yeah, we'll never catch everything.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we have 10 minutes left. I mean, I think, Benedict, it sounds like you're maybe going to come back with, like, is there a write-up or anything that you can share in an issue to say, hey, you're going off and working on this, just so that there's a bit more information that if somebody else comes on, they can see?
Yeah, I just started, actually. To be honest, I was on vacation last week, so I didn't even start my new job, and I still have a lot of leftovers from my old one.
Right.
So this is really, so the only thing that we are doing for sure now is the web tooling benchmark, and everything beyond is up for planning.
Okay.
So we are trying to get an idea of what is most important in Node.js performance, and where we should invest our resources.
Right. So, I mean, I'd suggest, you got a group of interested people here, but we want to make sure that other people have chance to comment as well. So I think opening an issue here saying, this is the benchmark you're going to work on, this is what it looks like, and here are some open questions. we can then encourage the broader set of collaborators to comment if they have input there as well.
Yeah, sure. I will open a new issue.
Okay, and then hopefully we get some feedback. It informs what you're doing, and then at the end we also add that benchmark into the results we can kind of report and keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely sounds good.
Okay, and I think otherwise we're gonna between now and the next meeting, likely the focus will be getting the DCEIS stuff up and running. Anything else people have on the go that we should talk about?
So I would like to get an idea of how important or how representative you think ECMAR is.
I think right now it's the only sort of whole system type benchmark we have. Is it that you're thinking it's not representative, or just don't know?
To be honest, I don't really know. It looks kind of reasonable, but I don't have a lot of experience with. So the problem on the web, it's easy because you can just browse or let the Chromium driver browse the web for you, and then you get a pretty good idea of what kind of scripts is running on the top 25 websites. But yeah, you have no idea what's running node servers, because all of this is usually closed source and yeah, some contractor work.
Right. So
Netflix promised us to give us some insight into their huge node
right
application, and we have some insights from Bloomberg, but yeah, the Bloomberg scripts, this is really crazy what they are doing, so probably not representative.
Okay.
Actually, the ECMAR benchmark itself it's a like simple one file benchmark, but the interesting part is the node modules that it uses, especially Express.js, and that has like a lot of type system things around. I was investigating on ECMAR performance for Chakra core, so I better note that. So yeah, I mean, like, unless like we have something similar like workload kind of benchmark, we can swap with ECMAR. I think we'll have to keep the ECMAR around till that time.
So I'm not trying to argue against ECMAR. I'm just trying to get a feeling.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the node DCEIS is a benchmark, I guess, like that has like more object creation and more real-time, like the actual usage, the reality usage, I would say. So that's like better than ECMAR. So I think, yeah, once that is stable, we can wave off ECMAR, and DCEIS would be the benchmark then. But at least like, what I'm trying to say is like it has like a lot of node modules, or we should have like, because people who write this node apps, they have this lot of node modules involved that does the heavy lifting, and we should come up with a benchmark that has that kind of features.
Okay.
So yeah, this is my thought.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's the best we've got now in terms of that kind of benchmark. DCEIS is the one that Intel's been working on, and we can understand if it's an overlap or a non-overlap or complementary. But the thought that does come to mind is, I know through the community committee, one of the things of focus is we're going to try and put some effort into is like community outreach, and so that might be something we try and sync up with, to say, okay, well, if we want to get more direct feedback from end users into what would make the right benchmarks, we might try and, if they're doing surveys and stuff like that, we could probably add some content for surveys along that line.
Yeah, that would be great.
So like, for example, if you can think of like the top 10 questions we'd like to ask end users in terms of, creating a benchmark, if we can open that up, discuss it in an issue here, then maybe we can go over to the community committee / foundation and say, okay, how could we get these questions in as part of a survey? Yeah,
we thought about running a survey actually pretty much like that. So we had one survey already via our web dev files on JavaScript usage. But that wasn't targeted towards Node only. It was just JavaScript in general.
Right.
But if you,
Yeah, I like that, Michael. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. Yeah.
If you guys can go out and run the survey yourself already and like share the results, that's great. So don't stop that. But if you think leveraging the foundation, the overall Node community to try and make those surveys go out on behalf of Node.js community, I think there's opportunity to do that as well.
I would be pretty happy if this runs via the community, especially via the Node community committee.
Right. So I think if we can come up with the question, like if you know the questions, if you said, here are 10 good questions we should put out, the rest of the people in this group, we can chime in if we have any other ideas, and then we can go and see how we can make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. We can. Maybe you can put this onto the agenda for next meeting.
Sure.
That would be a good topic to discuss. So I'm not sure. I will try to discuss all of these tomorrow and the next week
Okay.
with the rest of my team and see what resources we can spend.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new issues, because that's an easy way to get it on the agenda. So survey questions for end users to decide what to benchmark. Okay, I'm going to say generate questions and work with. Okay, minus all of my bad typing here. T. So I'm going to benchmarking agenda. And so can I say, Benedict, you're going to come up with some initial ideas?
You can, yes.
Okay. We'll come up. So that's now issue number 136. It's tag benchmarking agenda. So when I generate the agenda for when we meet in 2 weeks, it'll automatically show up. And any discussion we have between then and now, we can go over.
So what is this bi-weekly?
Yeah, it's every other week. So the next
other
one
week
is scheduled for September 9th at the same time.
Yeah, that should be possible. So I'm moving next month, but I think 9th should be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll block the calendar. So it's always this late or this early for you?
It's always the exact same one. We can talk about, do we need to come up with different times?
Yeah. Just to say though, the 9th is a Saturday. So is it supposed to be the 11th?
Okay, I may have. Let me see. I have it scheduled in the calendar, so I may have just read that wrong. It is. Sorry, it's the 11th. Monday the 9th. How does that make sense? It's the 11th, right?
The 9th of October. Yes.
Yeah.
Monday, 11th of September.
So it's the 11th of September. Sorry about that. I will update that here in the notes. September 11th.
I put something in my calendar. So yeah, I guess I can make it.
Okay.
Or I will find someone from our team to make it.
Yeah, and over time, we can talk about if this time really isn't doable, we can talk about can we adjust it to another time. It's a bit, well, like for all the groups, it's hard to find one that works perfectly for everybody. Some of the other ones we've had alternating times and stuff like that. So.
Well, it's fine. This is just summertime, I guess.
Okay. Summer's almost over.
Is better.
Yeah, summer's almost over, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, so I think our time is up. We're at the end of the hour now. We do usually give people on who are watching, if you have any questions, just chime them, put them into the original issue for the meeting, which I don't know if people who are watching can see the chat, but I'll paste it there just in case. It's issue 134 in the benchmarking workgroup. We'll just give people a couple minutes. Maybe 404, I'll call it. So Benedict, you mentioned a new job. Is it like you're now more focused on benchmarking, or is it?
No, I'm more focused on Node.
Oh, more focused on Node. Okay, so it's like you're specifically working on Node now. Okay.
Yeah, so previously I was tech lead for Turbofan, trying to launch that for 2 years. And now I'm tech lead for Node Performance, which allows me to do stuff beyond just the optimizing compiler.
Right. Okay. Okay. No, that's good to understand. So yeah, definitely this is a good group for you to be involved in. It's great.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't see. Actually, let's restart. I don't see any questions in the issue. So unless anybody else has anything else, we'll call it for this week and talk in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well then, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.